Perhaps it causes us to examine what we're doing to cause some of our children to hate.
All right, so Obama wants to know what is turning young males to hate, with causing them to hate overwhelmingly, which I don't think is the real question. I think it's a misdirection. I think he's trying to, like, bait and switch you. But we'll come back to that. The truth of the matter is that they don't want to know what's turning males into these mass shooters, because and it's easy to prove, because instead of having a discussion about what kind of medications these people were being fed, the crazy people to start with, and then they feed them medications that turn their brains into Swiss cheese. And nobody ever says, I mean, if you don't think Obama's in the pocket of Big Pharma, you haven't read the Affordable Care Act, okay? This is just the truth. It's so obvious that that they don't want to know the truth, that they're misdirecting you. We'll come back to that in a second. Here, don't take my word for it. Listen to this guy. He's brilliant.
What's your biggest criticism of what the mainstream news media does today? Like, what's the most dangerous thing?
Wow, there's so many dangerous things. They're not telling stories that are important. You have to go to alternative media, I guess, such as you do, to find other much more relevant stories and get at the truth behind things. You're just not seeing it. There are a couple of really glaring examples of it. You can see the pharmaceutical companies that advertise. You see things like the church killing the other day. I think every one of those mass shooters have one thing in common, and that's they're all on very heavy psych drugs. You do not see that story because it would cost the networks too much advertising from the pharmaceutical companies, who see them with the blessing of the FDA, can get on there and advertise stuff that gives you heart attacks and strokes. The warning label is longer than the actual commercial. I think that's so hypocritical and so horrific.
So as he said, all of these shooters, all these mass shooters are on major psych meds, okay? And nobody discusses it. If you really want to stop it, I mean, wouldn't you want to find out which one of these meds that these guys all have in common that they're fucking ingesting and turning their brains into Swiss cheese? Wouldn't we want to know that and pull that off the shelf and see if that helps slow things down a little bit? Because they don't want to stop it. They just want to grab your guns, okay? They want you to submit. They want you to be, they want to shame you. This is what's going to happen next, is they're going to try and shame you. Shame on you, Americans, for not stopping this by turning over your guns, by giving up your rights. These people, this crazy person in Congress today saying terrorists are buying AK-47s at gun shows.
They don't want terrorists to be able to buy a gun at a gun show. We should not be selling AK-47s to terrorists at gun shows.
These people, this crazy person in Congress today saying terrorists are buying AK-47s at gun shows. Now, I don't know if she's referring to you or me. I'm not buying AK-47s. But the truth is, if there's actual terrorists arming themselves in your neighborhoods with AK-47s and stockpiles of bullets from gun shows, then you better be prepared for that, huh? You better have something in your nightstand or whatever in your closet that's ready to deal with the terrorist next door is going to get you. The boogeyman is right next door, and he's got an AK-47. Okay, it's ridiculous. they're trying to scare you and shame you and get you to believe that the reason you need to do it is because you love your neighbor. You need to give up your guns because you love your neighbor. You need to give up your rights because you love your neighbor. You should be ashamed, Angus.
Mr. President, on September 11th, 2001, 3,000 people were brutally killed in this country. The response of our nation was overwhelming. We changed our laws. We increased our intelligence community's capacity dramatically. We fought 2 wars. We imposed vigorous inspection regimes at airports and in connection with transportation. We made huge changes in order to see that such a thing did not happen again. Why? Because we love each other. We're compassionate people.
That the reason you need to do it is because you love your neighbor. You need to give up your guns because you love your neighbor. You need to give up your rights because you love your neighbor. You should be ashamed, Angus. So Obama wants to know what's turning our children to hate, what's turning young men to hate.
Perhaps it causes us to examine what we're doing to cause some of our children to hate.
So Obama wants to know what's turning our children to hate, what's turning young men to hate. And really, again, it's a misdirection. It's not that they're being turned to hate. What it is they're being turned into psychotic, psychopathic killers. That's what's happening, okay? And this news model here is talking about how, you know, one of the common things with these shooters is that they feel like they're beta males and they want to be alpha males, right? They want to be the top dog. You know?
It appears he identified himself as a beta male, which is essentially the opposite of alpha male. So these are individuals like the Elliot Rogers in Santa Barbara who opened fire, you may remember, and had that disturbing YouTube video. These are individuals who feel like sort of the world is against them, that they can't get women, they have a hard time, and they're not as social perhaps. And so there are these websites that law enforcement are looking at about being, you know, beta males, that this gunman, they believe, interacted on these sites and had some, you know, involvement with them.
And this news model here is talking about how, you know, one of the common things with these shooters is that they feel like they're beta males and they want to be alpha males, right? They want to be the top dog, you know? And if you look at our society, right? If you look at our society, it's clear that, you know, I mean, what's the biggest alpha male that you can imagine on the planet, right? Putin, Obama, you know, these guys are psychotic, psychopathic killers. They murder children. At least Obama does. I don't know about Putin. But Obama murders children. He goes and takes out a whole wedding party, 130 people in a wedding party in a country we are not declared at war with. And then a couple hours later, he comes on TV and says, "Not one more child to gun violence." That's a psychopath. That's someone who kills and takes pleasure in it. And then gets a big smile on his face and says, "Not one more child to gun violence." He must just be laughing his fucking ass off. Okay? That's who we're dealing with. Okay? And the truth is, you know, he says, we have to find out what's turning our children to hate. No, we have to find out what's turning them into psychopathic killers. And what's turning them into psychopathic killers, besides the big pharma cocktails that turn their brains into Swiss cheese. Besides that, what's turning them into psychopathic killers is the example that's set by the alpha males. Barack Obama, psychopathic killers. Who else? Congress, everybody in Congress, they're all alphas, right? They're top dogs. Psychopathic killers. People in Congress, people in the Pentagon, they're all top dogs, right? Psychopathic killers. This is the example that's set for you. What else? Let's take it to the local community. What's top dogs in your local community? What's the top alpha males in your community? Cops. Cops go out and ruin people's lives every day and kill people every day. Psychopathic killers. Bloodthirsty. Psychopathic killers. That's the example of an alpha male. That's what this guy wanted to be. What's the easiest way to go and prove that you're an alpha male? Go and murder somebody like all the other alpha males do. Right? Doesn't that make sense? You don't believe me? Listen to Senator Murphy.
No matter how maligned Congress becomes, we still set the moral tone for the nation. When we declare something to be morally out of bounds, especially when we do it in a bipartisan or nonpartisan manner, Americans listen. They take cues from our endorsements and from our approbations.
Senator Murphy, we set the tone. Right. You go and you murder people. You bomb a hospital. And then you can't wait to go and talk about how we have to fully fund the Defense Department. We have to go and fully fund the psychopathic killers to go and blow up more hospitals, blow up more children in hospitals. But not one more child to gun violence. Right, Obama? They learned it from you, Mr. President. They learned it from you. That's the way I see it. One of these days this war is going to end when you decide that you're going to do your best to make it end. That's the only way it ends. It's up to you. Thank you very much for your continued support. Stay cool till that day.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.